I'm on the Pingree Park Road, and I have a dead body.
The circumstances that brought Scott Sessions and Heather Frank together on a Saturday in February of 2020 started off like a routine get-together, but it turned into a deadly date night that destroyed 3 lives and devastated many more. Before we begin, we would like to extend our deepest sympathies to the family and loved ones of the victims in this case, Scott Sessions and Heather Frank. Scott Sessions was a popular and talented musician who played the trumpet for 2 bands. He lived in Greeley, Colorado, a northern Colorado agricultural community of about 100,000 people located 60 miles from Denver. Scott first met the fun-loving, free-spirit Heather Frank at one of his shows. One of Scott's bandmates remembers Heather being smitten by Scott's charms right from the start. He noticed her gazing at Scott with what he called puppy dog eyes. Heather and Scott knew each other for just 18 days. What isn't known is how many times they met up before that fateful night of February the 8th. The evening started innocently enough. Heather reached out to Scott around 5 p.m. via Facebook Messenger with a short but enticing invitation. "Wanna come over?" Scott jumped at the chance to see Heather again. The 48-year-old mother of 3 adult sons was bubbly and fun to be with. He messaged her that he would hop in the shower and be right over. She told him to hurry and bring some beer. After giving her what he jokingly called a warning that he smelled pretty amazing, he messaged that he had picked up the beer and would be arriving at her place shortly. And that's when the story took a dark and sinister turn. The excitement of a newly budding romance soon turned into a horror show. Scott had unwittingly triggered a deadly tripwire when he started spending time with Heather. It was his friends from the George Gray and Elvis Experience band who first noticed Scott was missing on the following Monday night when he did not make their scheduled gig. Everyone acquainted with Scott knew one thing for certain: he would never voluntarily miss a show. Music was everything to Scott. Much of the video you will see in this case has not been released nor ever seen before.
He had a concert at the, they had a concert, Candlelight Dinner Theater, Monday night. And Scott didn't show up. Okay. George called and he said, "Do you have any idea where he might be?" And I said, "No." That's the first I knew that there was something.
Because Scott was very dependable.
Oh my God. Yes. He would not miss a gig with he would not. That was his life.
Okay.
And he had finally succeeded. It's been a long, long time getting there.
Scott's absence sounded the alarm among the rest of his social circle. That included the band members from another group he played with, the Movers and Shakers, along with friends and ex-girlfriends.
I got a text message yesterday morning from Kyle Borthwick, who is the lead for the Movers and Shakers and the drummer. He's the lead of the band. He sent me a Facebook message, and a private message, and said, "Do you know where Scott is? Have you talked with Scott?" And I answered and said, "No, why?" And he said he didn't show up for a gig with the George Gray Elvis Experience in Johnstown. So he was supposed to perform Monday night, Tuesday night. Scott is one of the most professional people I know as far as a musician. I mean, I can honestly say this on the record, he would never, ever miss a gig, ever. He loved his cat. He would have never have left his cat. That's how I knew something was really wrong.
George Gray and Stanley Sessions met up at Scott's house to look for him. Only his cat Munchkin was there and clearly had not been fed for several days. Where was Scott Sessions? There was no sign of the 53-year-old musician. Fearing the worst, his father filed a missing persons report. What Scott's loved ones did not know was he had already been found. The day before, a snowplow operator spotted a plume of smoke in the Pingree Park, about a 2-hour drive from Greeley in Larimer County. When the driver stopped to extinguish the fire that morning, he was shocked to discover in the flames there was a human body. It was being consumed by the fire. He was wrapped in plastic and lying face down next to a log.
I'm on the Pingree Park Road at the Monument Gulch exit, and I have a dead body.
Okay, we'll get help on the way. Are you able to provide any details?
Well, there was a tree on fire, and I went up to put it out, and he's laying next to it.
Okay, and you believe he's beyond any help?
Yeah, he's definitely passed away.
There's no indication that this guy was camping. There's no other personal property. He's face down next to a log that's burning bright. There's no vehicles that we could find in the close vicinity. However, we haven't searched everywhere yet, but this is looking like it's possibly a body dump.
Is the body clothed or not?
He is clothed, but it's hard to tell whether it's appropriate clothing due to the condition.
Is he covered in fresh snow?
Because of the heat of the fire. The tracks that we think might have been made by him or whoever was here, there is slight snow covering it, so I don't know how much they got overnight, if it was dusting or if the wind was blowing. So if he's still there, it doesn't look like this guy had made a campfire. Just doesn't look like we'd expect.
Lincoln 11, I apologize. Same 18's out of the room, confirming there was a campfire made, just doesn't look normal.
It does not look like this is an intentional campfire, so this does not look normal.
Scott was identified by a fingerprint reader during the autopsy. The toxicology report also revealed small amounts of codeine, morphine, and marijuana in his system. His car was found in the King Soopers supermarket parking lot. Investigators began to work the case, trying to figure out who might have had a grudge against Scott or who might have information about where he had gone. Scott's father spoke to the police about his son's tumultuous romantic relationships. He described him as an emotional guy who didn't hold back when he fell in love.
What about girlfriends?
He had a hell of a track record there. He was married many, many years ago, and that ended up in divorce, and collected a felony out of that.
2 of Scott's ex-girlfriends were questioned at the police station. Officers were particularly interested in brushes that Scott had with the legal system when those relationships grew rocky.
Scott overreacted to everything. He had it trigger, his temper was just like that, right? And he would go from 0 to 8, like so quickly. And I thought I could learn how to pull that back, and I never really did learn how to pull it back. In fact, we had a discussion about that at the beginning of January.
Loretta described a heated argument she had with Scott. He threw a cup of coffee at her and then grabbed her. She threatened to call the police if he didn't get out of her house immediately. He left and then proceeded to call the cops on himself.
I'm not scared of Scott. I'm scared of Scott's temper right at that moment. Right, but Scott overall is not a terrible person. He's got issues though. So I started cleaning up. Well, Scott, because I think this is what he claimed, because he had that history, he was afraid if he didn't call the cops first, then they would arrest him for sure. So he called the cops.
He called police to get ahead of her. He thought, she'll call and then I'm going to get picked up. Well, he called and he got picked up anyway. And now that's the probation that he's still on.
Both Loretta and Scott's father agreed that it was his earlier problems with a previous girlfriend that had led him to proactively call the police. Ex-girlfriend Laura Stevens spoke about the troubles that she and Scott had in their relationship.
And so during that relationship, you had indicated that there were some troubles and stuff like that?
In our relationship?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Can you explain what those were?
He became very jealous. And that was difficult because I'd be out with friends, and if a man came up to talk to me, he would get upset. And then eventually, and he would get really angry. So I decided for my own safety and well-being, I filed a restraining order. And that was for 3 months. The judge would have granted me lifetime, but I chose the 3 months just to see what would happen. He didn't bother me in the 3 months. He's really straightened out. He's the happiest I've ever seen him. That's why this is such a shock.
Okay.
Eventually, both women mended the rifts they had with Scott and built friendships with him over time. He had worked on his issues of the previous few years and finally seemed to be hitting his stride. They both spoke highly of him and talked about his magnetic and dynamic personality that drew friends into his orbit. He was especially elated when he was performing regularly.
Scott struggled in a lot of ways, but he was amazing too, right? He was brilliant mind with music, and the ability to deal with people. He never forgot anybody's name, as you've read. He was nice to everybody, nice all the time. He never really had a reason to be mean to anybody until you pissed him off, right? Then it was another story. Always road rage. I hated driving with him. I used to say, Scott, people carry guns. Don't do that. Don't follow so close. Don't drive like that. I was always, so in this whole last few days, I thought maybe it was a road rage incident. Maybe he'd gone up to the mountains and something happened, so I thought, oh, that's a possibility. Because he would have his hair trigger reactions, and he would pull it back pretty quickly, which was strange. I'd never been with anybody in my life like that. They'd go up so far, and they could come down so quickly.
As those close to Scott speculated on what chain of events could have led to his death, they acknowledged that they had feared he would lose his life prematurely.
My mind, it's not just, it wasn't random. There's no way a random event took out Scott Sessions. I just don't think it. He made it 53 years. He's done, crack. He's done meth. He's done, Scott's done everything. I don't think he's done heroin, but Scott, you don't know how he survives because he makes dumb decisions constantly. So I didn't think it would be a random act that takes him out, right? And I know that sounds kind of harsh to say take him out, but you think about it when you're around someone like that, when they risk themselves a lot.
Sure.
For most of Scott's life, Stanley Sessions had also worried about his son's safety.
He was always a little kid, and he was always picked on himself. He'd been in counseling since, off and on, all the way from 2nd grade. And along the way, there's been some stuff. I've seen inside of jails I never ever expected to see. I met law enforcement people up and down the Front Range, and went and gathered him up a few times from jail, but it looked like he had really turned the page. And I tell you all of this because in my reaction to your telling me he was deceased was I wasn't surprised very much, because I think we had been close to this place times before, years and years ago.
Sure.
So I didn't know. I didn't react because I guess for 50 years I've been conditioned that something could go wrong.
His excitement about music was evident even with casual contacts. Scott had recently returned from a trip to the Memphis International Blues Challenge where he competed with the Movers and Shakers. Just 2 days before he died, a surveillance video put Scott excitedly sharing the news of his band's success with the staff at his bank.
Scott!
Hey!
How are you? Is it the first? Come on over.
All right, thank you. I think I better put some money in the bank.
Working hard or hardly working?
Hardly working, really.
Yeah.
We just got back from Memphis, so it's like, trying to recover. But we
Planned or was it family?
Yeah, it was an International Blues Challenge.
Ooh.
So we made it to the semifinal round, and the band that from the semifinal round that was in our venue was the one that won it all. So we kind of basically lost to the winners. You know? But it was so fun.
That's good. That is good.
So, still on the Memphis high, you know. That's great.
After Scott's body was discovered, police caught a break when they found Scott's Facebook password inside his residence on February 14th. When they logged into his account, they learned that the last messages he exchanged were with Heather Frank. Cell tower data confirmed that Scott's phone was in the vicinity of Heather's place the evening of February the 8th. His phone never moved from that location and eventually went dead on the morning of the 9th. It was never found. Detectives then began to focus their investigation on Heather Frank and her on-again, off-again boyfriend of 5 years, Kevin Eastman. After their last breakup, Kevin had moved 250 miles away to live with his sister in Parachute, Colorado. But on February the 8th, Kevin and Heather's cell phones spent the night at her place. Both phones began moving together on February 9th, but stopped pinging when they reached an area known for poor cell phone reception. The route they had traveled led to the Pingree Park, the same area where Scott's body had been found. Police placed trackers on both Heather and Kevin's cars and attached a camera to a streetlight pointing at Heather's place. They continued to build their case as they watched the comings and goings of Heather and Kevin for nearly a week and secured warrants for their arrest. But just before the police were about to swoop in and take Heather and Kevin into custody, a shocking turn of events caught them off guard. They planned to arrest the pair that Sunday, but when they got to work and checked their vehicle tracker data, they learned that Kevin's car had been on the move overnight. He had traveled extensively throughout the Pawnee grasslands and made several stops. One of those stops was on a remote ranch property owned by Troy Bonnell, who had previously employed Kevin occasionally. Lieutenant Donnie Robbins of the Larimer County Sheriff's Department jumped in his unmarked car and drove out to find Kevin. Watching from a distance, he saw Kevin tending a fire on Troy's property. When Kevin got in his car and started driving away, Lieutenant Robbins followed him to a gas station in the nearby town called Kersey. He was pumping fuel into a portable canister. Lieutenant Robbins could not allow Kevin to burn anything else that would be evidence, so he arrested him on the spot. Once a search warrant was secured for Troy Bonnell's place, cops began their search. They were looking for evidence that Kevin left behind and clues to Heather's whereabouts. But her body wasn't in the containment structure where Kevin had been burning assorted items. This video of Heather exiting her apartment with Kevin following close behind was captured around 5:30 in the evening on February the 15th. That was the last time she was seen on surveillance cameras. Heather did not show up for her Sunday shift as a manager at Doug's Day Diner in Loveland. A police investigator stopped by to interview the restaurant owner, Ali Nolby, who was also a friend of Heather's going back 20 years. Sitting on a bench outside, they spoke about her relationship with Kevin, which was turbulent and at times violent. Kevin had asked Heather to marry him 3 times, but she flatly refused. The two had been living together, but a few weeks earlier, Kevin had moved to his sister's place in Parachute, Colorado, in an attempt to cut ties with Heather once and for all.
Things got rocky. There was a couple times where she wouldn't come to work, and then she'd show up, and I'd meet her outside, and she'd be black and blue. And you have to understand, her and Kevin were together for a really long time. Their relationship was really good, and then it started getting crazy. Just some of the things that she would tell me is he was very physical. If they drank together, extremely physical. So she started going to therapy. They both wanted to do couples therapy. That wasn't working. So, she would tell me that she would want to break up with him, but she was afraid that he wouldn't take it well. As a friend, my husband, we offered to go with her to help her get her belongings so she wouldn't be alone. And that kind of went on and on. We never actually did.
Less than a year before Heather died, a police officer responded to a hospital in Denver where she was being treated for injuries inflicted by Kevin while they were staying in a hotel room.
Okay, we'll turn the lights on. I just got assigned this call. You want to tell me what happened?
Just argument in the hotel room. Punches to the left side of my ribs. And I had to get out of there because it was going to hurt worse. So I left.
Who did this to you?
Kevin Eastman.
How many times did he punch you?
3 times. Just like, get away. Like he always does. This is the first time he's done this to me.
Although Heather did not always report the violence that she had endured at Kevin's hands, a warrant was issued against him for assault following that attack. But he was not arrested until Heather went missing. While Larimer County officers were serving a search warrant at Troy Bonnell's place, other officers began interrogating Kevin Eastman at the police station. They were also questioning Troy about what happened on his property the previous night. Troy said that Kevin had failed to show up to do some work for him as planned a few days earlier, so he was surprised when he saw the headlights of Kevin's car coming toward his house that evening. Kevin gave excuses for why he was late and started unloading tools into Troy's garage. His demeanor seemed upbeat and normal, so Troy didn't sense anything was amiss, and he did not stay outside supervising Kevin's activities. Instead, he went back inside to spend time with his girlfriend who was visiting. While the police were questioning Troy told them that he saw no sign of Heather at his place. But as the interrogation was taking place, they received an update from officers in the field who were searching his property.
So here's the thing, I know it feels like I've been stalling for time here, and I have a little bit, because sometimes I get information that I'm not allowed to share, and I gotta wait until they let me share it.
Okay.
So when they were doing the search warrant at your property, they did find a body.
What?
Yes, sir. And
where?
That I'm not sure. Obviously, I wasn't there. I've been here with you, but they are trying to tell me that they found a body on your property. They believe it's a female, so obviously you know what we're thinking. That it's Heather, so that's like
Jesus fucking Christ!
Yeah.
Why didn't you tell me that shit?
Well, I only heard about 2 breaks ago, and then I had to get my boss to authorize me to tell you. Because, So that's just, you've been so patient with us, and I wanted to explain to you why this is extending, right?
Yeah, but I got nothing to do with this shit.
Okay.
I mean, I'm in the fucking I'm this motherfucker, man.
I could see if I was in your position, I'd be pissed too. I
don't deserve this shit.
I'm sure, kind of like you're beyond tired.
Yeah.
But hopefully that helps you to understand why I need your help, and
I'm telling you,
with me.
Fucking goddamn, bro.
Yeah. So
where?
I
know my property pretty well.
I can work on finding out a little more information on that outside somewhere. Beyond that, like I say, I literally don't know. I get little snippets of information, quick phone calls with the boss when I'm out of the room, right? So remember I said,
on my fucking property.
Me. Yeah. Yes, sir. So let's.
Dude, I fucking.
So you know nothing about it?
Fuck no.
Okay. And I have no reason not to believe you.
Heather's body was found under a large piece of wood. Her body was wrapped in plastic and wire. She had been shot twice in the chest at close range with a small caliber gun. Her blood test showed a small amount of methamphetamine was present. Her blood alcohol level was .243, more than 3 times the legal limit for driving. That final surveillance video of Heather showed her getting into a car that would drive her to her death. Police officers said they feel horrible that the arrest could not have taken earlier to have saved Heather's life, but it came one day too late. She did not deserve to die, and they feel sad for her sons who lost their mother, but they maintain they could not have predicted the chain of events that resulted in Heather's murder. As they were questioning Troy Bonnell, police were also questioning Kevin Eastman. At times, he claimed he did not remember what happened, blaming an old head injury. Other times, he implied that someone else had killed Scott and that he promised not to reveal their identity. He also said that he didn't believe that Heather was dead.
I went over to the house because I know that she gets too drunk and I don't want her to lose her job.
Okay.
And I'm sure her car won't start if she's been drinking past a certain time, past 8 p.m. If she drinks past 8, she knows her car won't start. Then I've been with her on the phone in the past, and it's just easier to just go over there and make sure she's up and give her a ride.
And then you dry heaved a couple times in the sink?
Yeah, like fucking 20.
Okay. So what room?
She was all fucking, I don't know what you call it.
Can you get the trash can?
Kevin, breathe. Okay? Hey, Kevin, pick your head up and breathe, okay? In and out. In through your nose, and out through your mouth. Kevin, what room was it in? Was it in the living room?
Gentlemen, I can't say. I can't say I'm sorry. I'm sorry. This is the only thing I've got. My word, and I promised. I can't give that up, please. I'll give up my whole life, but I can't give that up. I know it doesn't make sense.
Investigators tried to persuade Kevin to tell them where and how Scott Sessions was killed.
Describe it to us.
I didn't see it. It had to be someplace serious for that amount of fucking blood.
So there was a lot of blood there. Where was the blood at?
Every fucking where.
Was it in the kitchen, or was it in the dining room? Was it in the living room? Was it in the bedroom? Where? Kevin, breathe. Remember the truth. Your conflict right now that you are struggling with right now will be gone. All you have to do is tell us where it was.
I did. It was everywhere. Every fucking where. Everywhere. But I suggested it would be a legitimate idea to just call the police now, because this is serious.
Unable to pry much information out of Kevin, officers left him alone with his thoughts in the interrogation room. That led to some odd moments as he was left to mull over his predicament.
Please let it be alive, out of body in the burn pile. Please. Amazing someone I wish I could see. Frère Jacques, Frère Marjon, Frère Marjon. Give me back the clicker.
When police conducted a search of Heather's apartment, they found what appeared to be blood spatters in several spots. Under the front doormat, there was a large stain. Police believe that's where Scott was ambushed as he came through Heather's door. He was hit in the head, and his throat was slashed, nearly decapitating him. Defensive wounds on his hands showed that he did try to fight back, but only Kevin Eastman knows exactly what happened to Scott and Heather, and he's not talking.
I can't say no more, guys. I can't. I don't... In the days afterward, everybody having different what-ifs and scenarios and theories and explanations. And just too much. I don't know how accurate anything that I remember is or is going to be. There was just a lot of stuff going on. There was a lot of emotions. There was a lot of fucked up shit that should have never happening.
Describe it to us.
Fuck, I don't know, man.
Rita Severin is an investigator from the Larimer County Sheriff's Office in Fort Collins, Colorado. When Heather went missing, she interviewed people close to her as she tried to piece together what might have happened. She spoke with all three of Heather's sons, including Alexander McLaughlin, who was Heather's firstborn.
Tell me about your mom and Kevin's relationship.
Wild, I guess I would say. Like, in the beginning, when they first met, he's an alcoholic. My mom is pretty much an alcoholic too. They would get into a lot of fights. The first incident of him ever hurting her, he broke her wrist and tried to slit her throat. She told me it was a bar fight, but this was back in 2014, so 5-6 years ago.
And when you say he tried to slice her throat, how do you know that?
Because her throat had a scar, or not a scar, it was scabbed over, like he tried to cut her throat with a dull knife.
When Alex would ask his mom why she was staying with Kevin, her answer was always the same: I don't know. Before Heather's body was found, Rita Severin talked to Heather's mother, Mary, about her daughter's stormy relationship with Kevin Eastman.
It's like vinegar and oil. I know Kevin cares deeply for her. I'm not quite sure on what she really feels for him. I think at times, yes, she is deeply committed to him, and other times, not so much. My daughter's complicated. There has to be a child in every family, I guess. And she's my problem child. Has been since high school. Mm-hmm. And she just keeps repeating the same routine over and over and over.
Mary spoke about Heather and Kevin abusing alcohol.
They're both alcoholics.
Okay.
They are. Now, Heather can control it. She can. For a period of time.
Can he control it?
Yes. Yes. I've seen him do it, and I've seen them both drunker than skunks.
Despite the problems her daughter faced in life, Mary is proud of how Heather's 3 sons turned out.
You know, I will say one thing, as screwed up as my daughter is, she has 3 fine young boys. They're all in their 20s now, but they turned out pretty damn good. Grandma will say that much for them.
Yeah.
They are respectful. They are polite. They are soft-spoken. They have not gotten into trouble, unlike their mother or their father. They saw what their parents were and decided that's not for us.
Heather's niece would later speak out in court about her aunt and tell the courtroom that her grandmother had died feeling the heartache of losing a child. In 2021, Kevin Eastman pled not guilty to charges that included 2 counts of first-degree murder after deliberation, tampering with a deceased human body, and tampering with evidence. He underwent 2 competency evaluations and was found to be competent to stand trial. The case went to trial in the summer of 2022.
Power, control, coercion, and revenge. At its very core, this case is about domestic violence. The defendant, Kevin Eastman, he didn't want to lose Heather Green.
On July the 20th, a jury found 50-year-old Kevin Eastman guilty of all charges.
What I will say, Mr. Eastman, is that you are going to spend the rest of your natural life in prison based on your vicious acts of violence, jealousy, and control, and the taking of 2 precious lives, and thereafter disposing of their deceased bodies in such a disrespectful manner. That's why you're going to spend the rest of your life in prison.
Kevin Eastman was sentenced to serve 2 consecutive life sentences plus an additional 27 years in the Colorado Department of Corrections prisons. He refused to make a statement at the sentencing hearing, but family members and friends of the victims did speak out, including Scott's father, Stanley Sessions.
When he took Scott's life, he started a chain reaction that I'm sure he doesn't know anything about. Scott's mother was lying in a nursing home in North Glen, expected to live not very long. And you can imagine, and I don't mean to be selfish, I just as an illustration, you can imagine what it was like for me to have to go tell her on her deathbed that her son had been murdered. Her response was, who would kill my Scotty? She never mentioned another word. She lived 2 more months and passed away. He deprived her of telling him goodbye, and he telling her goodbye.
My mom was more than just my mom. She was my best friend. The memories we had together I will cherish forever. I miss her every day, and will continue to miss her every day. Not only was she a mother, she was a daughter, a sister, and a friend to many. She was loving, funny, crazy, and down to earth to many myself.
All 3 people in the center of this tragic tale had serious problems: excessive alcohol use, questionable life choices, and troubled romantic relationships. but every one of them was trying to forge a new start in their own way. Scott Sessions had built friendships with his ex-girlfriends following turbulent relationships. He was finally experiencing his lifelong dream of performing regularly as a musician. Heather Frank had landed a solid job opportunity when she was promoted from being a waitress to becoming a manager of the restaurant where she worked, and she had made strides in escaping a relationship that was plagued by jealousy and violence. Kevin Eastman had seemed to finally grasp his feelings for Heather Frank were never going to be reciprocated to his satisfaction. He left Greeley to start over in a new town 4 hours away, where he moved in with his sister, who insisted that he stay sober in her home. Despite the steps they all took towards building promising futures for themselves, it wouldn't be enough to save 2 people's lives and 1 person's freedoms. If you found this case compelling, don't forget to like the video, comment down below and give your take on it, and please subscribe to the channel. Also, hit the notification bell to stay up to date when we reveal a new shocking case. Until next time, stay safe and keep your eyes peeled. You never know what's lurking in the shadows.